things about living in Tobermory. Being able to go out your front door straight into a beautiful wilderness.
Beautiful scenery. And probably the best fish and chip shop in the country.
Knowing everybody's lovely.
Although sometimes it can be a bit close for comfort.
If Tobermory was an animal, it would be a little cairn terrier, twee and cute, and has a lot of character.
I'm sure if Tobermory was an animal, it would be a womble.
Mark Steele's in town.
And welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which this week comes from Tobermory on the Isle of Mull, the Bronx of the Hebrides. And just as New York calls itself the city that never sleeps, Tobermory is a place where the fishing tackle shop stays open until 4 o'clock on a Wednesday. And to be honest here, the noise and the crowds at the Mole Museum can be overbearing, and you do have to retreat into the countryside for some peace. But you've been remarkably clever here at Tobermory, because although it's a petite town with fewer buildings than in some other larger places, you've created a major tourist attraction by having brightly coloured houses on the harbour. In Dubai, they attract visitors by making buildings out of half of the world's metal and glass, and here it took you 6 tins of emulsion. And the place where most people may well have seen these houses is the children's show Tobermory. Tobermory is a show that preschool kids love, full of characters who say, "Hi, I'm Mrs McCready, I run the local bus." And "Hello, I'm PC Plum, the local policeman." Now I've come here, I realise it's actually not a kiddies show at all. It's a real-life documentary about life on the island. A mole version of The Only Way is Essex. Tobermory is ridiculously stunningly beautiful, with its immaculate harbour and its colourful houses on the cliffs. It's also a glorious place for a holiday, although you do need, I think, a whole month to appreciate it properly. 2 weeks to get here, an afternoon in Tobermory, and 2 weeks to get back. Because first you have to get to Oban, where you'll think, "Oh, what a charming little Highlands town." Although on your way back from Tobermory you think, "My God, it's huge!" It's got more than one road and another shop apart from the co-op. I can't stand this. From Oban you get the ferry to Craignure, which is supposed to take about an hour. You then hack your way through Brecon from there to Tobermory. It's a town of about 900 people with only about 12 shops round the harbour, which means that those shops have to sell just the essentials, which is why one of the shops sells luxury soap and another one deals in handmade chocolate, because once you've got the basics covered, you're pretty sorted. And that means you only have to get the ferry to Oban for little treats, such as food and toilet roll. Honestly, a list of things that you can't get here includes towels and underpants. Oban and back for shopping is roughly a 5-hour round trip. But to be fair, sometimes the ferry company thinks, well, that's hardly time to relax at all. So as there's a light breeze, let's bobble about at Craignure Pier for another 2 hours. Unable to dock so that they can make a day of it. And then everyone gets off at Craignure with their shopping full of random objects that you can't buy here. So it's like the end of the generation game. And you expect a voice to go, "A toaster, some ink for a printer, a set of bath towels, a pair of Y-fronts." And then all you've got to do to get back to Tobermory is crawl along the road behind a tourist, going at 6 miles an hour on the off chance they'll spot a sea eagle. Going, "Slow down, Marjorie, let's hold up the locals even more by looking at the 2 broken boats near Salon." You all know each other in Tobermory, it seems to me, from being here a little while. I mean, I know this because even if you're on the phone, if you just say to someone, "Cheers then, Dave," someone in the street will say, "Oh, is that Dave McLean you're talking to? From the Harbour Centre, who owns a telescope. His granddad wore odd socks at his brother's wedding." Which is quite endearing, but there is another side to this, which is that you daren't say anything bad about anyone. In case it gets back, it must be like living in Soviet Russia in 1958. If you want to tell someone you didn't like your service wash, you have to go, meet me on the golf course under the third fir tree. Then sneak up behind him. My shirt came back still stained. OK, I've said enough. We're being watched. There's a part of the tourist website that I particularly admired that went, Tobermory is the undisputed capital of the island of Mull. Well, it bloody is undisputed. There's 20 people on Mull and 17 of them live here. Of course it's the capital. Who's going to put in a claim to take capital status of you? De Vague? The mayor would have to be an eagle. There's a marvellous attempt to claim a little bit of celebrity status as well on the tourist websites. There's one incident in particular they all mention. For example, under Explore Tobermory, it says, the composer Felix Mendelssohn came through in 1829 on his way to Staffa. I bet that brings the tourists in, doesn't it? And he never even stayed, it was on his way through. The plaques commemorating other historical figures like Neil Armstrong flew over here on his way to the moon. For real, genuine fame, you have to go further down the website to read, Tobermory is home to the most famous pair of white-tailed sea eagles in the world. Now, I had no idea that white-tailed sea eagles can be measured in terms of celebrity status. The Tobermory sea eagles go, we're on the front cover of National Geographic again. We've had Springwatch on the phone wanting to do a feature where we're not swooping without a limo from the Erie. I have to say, Tobermory, an even more ridiculous attempt to claim celebrity status here is you've got an otter that you've called Elvis. And the only similarity between Elvis the otter and Elvis the king of rock and roll is they're both dead. This dead otter's skeleton is in the window of the harbour centre with a plaque saying Elvis, presumably in the hope that tourists think, oh, he's not in Gracelands after all. He's in Tobermory and he's only 2 foot long and he had a tail. It is truly glorious here. I thought, I wonder if it's got a cinema. And it turns out it has. You can look it up on the What to Do section of the local website, and it says, I quote, cinema location, Lacheague car park. The cinema is on a lorry and transported around the remote parts of Scotland. Now, you might all look as if that's normal. Our cinema's meant to be on a lorry? Do you go to that? And it's on a lorry?
Yeah. It opens up. It's like a transformer.
Like a transformer? It opens up. Do older people go, don't trust these modern places with their multiplex lorries? I remember seeing that. I remember seeing the Sound of Music on the side of a donkey. It's just such a different world here. It's not just the speed that things move at, it's the way of looking at things. There's a story in my book about the island, about Bochend, which were huts around the island for illegal drinking. And a policeman one day discovered one of these huts, and in court this was his evidence. When I examined the premises, I discovered in one corner 2 pails containing 1,257 seals of beer cans. In another corner, there was a case containing 3 empty whisky bottles, 2 half bottles, 5 unopened bottles, and 2 bottles of brandy. There were 31 full cans of beer under the peats in the corner. After carefully considering the evidence, it is my opinion this place has been used for drinking. Another claim that I am starting to believe, but at first I will confess, Tobermory, I had trouble with this. I assumed, quite reasonably, that with Mull being an island poking out into the Atlantic, only 5 or 6 miles from the North Pole, that it would rain here a lot. But then, according to the Mole magazine Round and About, what a fantastic summer! Now it's autumn and the sun is still shining. Just a pity no one else in Britain seems to be aware that out here in the West we've been basking in sun while the rest of the country struggles with rain. Is that true? It's been boiling hot and you've had water brought over here because you ran out of water. And there's a drought. I reckon you'll have Geldof here next, will you? Just take a look at this land. It's so dry, nothing can grow. Its people here have become so delirious with thirst that they've started imagining that lorries turn into cinemas. Please, please help the people of Mull. Bring them water. As we know, this year you had your first heist. According to the Daily Record, in June 2012, thieves snatched Spanish galleon treasure from Scottish Museum. Museum curator Peter Siddle said the theft happened during opening hours. It's thought a man distracted staff while the thief struck. To be fair, distracting the staff at the museum can't have taken the planning of the finest criminal minds. It'd make a really short film, wouldn't it? The Tobermory job. Right, here's a plan. Nobby walks into the museum on a Tuesday. The security will probably say something like, we don't normally get anyone in on a Tuesday. Big Ernie says we saw Elvis the Otter this morning. Security will spend 40 minutes talking about dead otters. Dave and Terry take the treasure. Don't waste time looking at the photo of Duet Castle or we'll be done for. The history here is also exactly what you would expect from the Highlands. For centuries there were these rival clans, and almost every page in the history books goes, they attacked with swords and many were slain, and the laird's daughter married a Forsyth to seal a treaty, but they fell out over where to put the toaster, so there was an attack with swords and many more were slain. So while most people worked on the land, owning a small farm, paying rent, it was certainly lively here, which is why Dr. Johnson and Boswell came in the 1700s to write one of the world's first travel books, as there were plenty of people that they could be snobbish about. For example, Boswell wrote about a girl that he called Mally, who he met, saying, "She is as wild as any filly in Mull, with little notion of good breeding. Mr. Johnson tried to talk with her, but the poor thing knew nothing. She was 17 and yet had never read a play." It really is no wonder some Scottish people hate the English, is it? You mean to say you're 9 years old and don't understand the LBW law? There isn't a great deal in the book, to be honest, about the common people, and you might think that's because mixing with the crofters and farmers wasn't really Boswell and Johnson's outlook. But according to this book, Mull, the Island and its People, there's another reason why Boswell and Johnson didn't mention common people. He says, if we find the two friends unobservant when it comes to the ordinary people of the island, we must remember that Dr. Johnson was short-sighted. Also, the huts of the poor were obscured by rain and mist. Thing with the poor, once it rains you can't see them. So it was lively, certainly was lively here. Tobermory was set up as a fishing port in the 18th century. There were 10,000 people on Mull around 1820, and one of the things that kept the place going was kelp, which was this sort of seaweed that could be used in soap and glass and food, and this was extremely valuable at the time. There were probably adverts at the time going, "We pay cash for kelp. Do you have any kelp jewellery? Pop it in an envelope and we'll pay cash." And then there was a potato famine and the price of kelp collapsed, and then there was the dreadful business of the clearances when the landowners could make more money out of the land for sheep than having people on it. And so the terrible thing about clearing people off, if you look up the Isle of Mull clearances on the internet, the first thing to come up is a removal firm called Isle of Mull Clearances. I really don't think they can do a lot of business, can they? I don't understand it. We set up a company called Isle of Mall Clearances with an advert. We'll have you out of your house in no time. Hardly any business at all. By the end of the clearances, the population had gone down from 10,000 to 3,000, and hundreds of them were in the poorhouse in Tobermory, where residents were given just the most basic necessities: water, bread, Belgian chocolates, and flaky, expensive purple soap. I get the impression that the gap between Highlands and the Lowlands is bigger than the gap between Scotland and England. For example, you have the Highland Games here, whereas they don't really toss a lot of cabers in Debenhams in Glasgow. But more peculiar to the outsider than the actual games, I think, is the opening ceremony, which the Oban Times called the most stunning ever because the performance, called Fish Out of Water, involved men dressed as silver fish dancing round a field. Well, that's put Danny Boyle in the shade, hasn't it? And then most of the Highland Games seem to involve finding huge objects that really ought to be left where they are and throwing them. Most people see something huge and think, well, that's a size, but up here you think, oh, there's a fully grown bull, I wonder how far I can chuck that. There's still Gaelic spoken here quite a bit, which might be surprising, as 100 years ago you could be beaten with a strap in school for speaking it. Eventually the authorities realised that if they wanted to turn people against Gaelic, instead of beating them with a strap, they just needed to spend millions on a Gaelic television station. Now, I was lucky enough to meet someone who speaks and translates Gaelic, and even finding Janet was very Tobermory, because Olive in the museum heard me say, so where's Janet's house? To someone else. And suddenly Olive went, oh, you want Janet? She's up the hill, on the left, around and up. I said, all right, have you got the exact address? She said, well, that is the address. Janet's post comes with Janet up the hill, around and up. Mull. So, Janet, is Mull one of the places where Gaelic is still being revived a bit?
It's definitely being revived, yes. We have a school where children are taught through the language. So
do you think there'll be a time when Gaelic is people's first language again?
I would certainly like to think so. Yes, everyone? Yes?
Now all say yes in Gaelic. Now, Janet has taught me some key phrases essential for survival on Mull. So, right, here's one. Mo grach, grach mi, na drash agam san oban fami dola nul gam fayin. That means, oh my God, I've left those new underpants in Oban. I think you'll be able to get this one, even if Gaelic isn't your first language. It's Haki Lai and Shur. Haki Felix Mendelssohn and Shur. Which is Felix Mendelssohn, come through right here. Thanks very much to Janet. Give her a round of applause. I absolutely recommend her tutorials. A beautiful language. The most Gaelic, I have to say, that I've heard since I was up here was when I was driving and I could only get reception for one radio station, which was Argyll FM on a Sunday. And it was a Presbyterian service. And without any doubt, even though I couldn't understand a word, it was the dourest thing I have ever heard. It was just Ark no goes about the record no frosting. Oh, God, there's a bird. What nurse but no ship at Kurt no stay at the go. And the which is and I thought, oh my God, I can't understand the language, but I know the day of judgment started. And it's not going as well as hoped. There's another point where a major event in history has shaped the island, which is the effect on Mull of the battle between Francis Drake and the Spanish Armada. Because after the Spanish fleet was attacked, the Spanish ships that weren't sunk tried to escape by sailing up the English Channel, round the top of Scotland and back down past Mull. And one ship pulled into Tobermory for repairs. While the ship was there, it caught fire and sunk. And one theory you seem keen on here as to why this happened is there was a beautiful Spanish princess on the ship who Duart Maclean, the Laird of Mull, fell in love with. So, Duart's wife, for revenge, asked the blue-eyed witch of Lochaber to sort it out. And she got these magic cats to run on the ship and jump on the gunpowder with their sparking fur. Now, amazingly, this was later used as a plot in Tobermory. The one where Archie the Inventor was on crack. There's an extraordinary variety of activities that take place here in Tobermory. It's just that they all happen at a more manageable level than normal, I think. There's a rally here every year, a car race. And you think, well, there can't be a car race on Mull. And then you read an account of it that says locals are encouraged to take part in the race. And though they can't drive as well as the senior races and their cars are inferior, they often make up for this by knowing the shortcuts. I should add that everyone I've spoken to denies this, but I do feel I should say, for clarity, that isn't how motor racing works. It's not like a normal journey where you're just trying to get to the end so you can put the kettle on, or the Brazilian Grand Prix would be won by an old woman who knows a back double behind the pit stop. But it's culture. There's a sense of culture here. You wander through the heather and it feels like you should be sipping the Tobermory whiskey and painting and writing poems full of words like "we leckin' Bucknacky" or something. There's a seminal work known as Tobermory the Cat. Now, this is one of literature's great modern characters, like the Great Gatsby, based on a ginger cat that strolls around the harbour, and a local artist created a website in the cat's name. But then someone from Edinburgh wrote a book called Tobermory the Cat, and now there's a dispute about who has the rights to Tobermory the Cat. And now there's a bitter legal battle, and it's just nice to know, really, that while the rest of the world is fussing over trifles like impending economic disaster and global warming, you're rowing about the issues that really matter. Now, does everybody know about the cat? Yes. And whose cat is Tobermory the Cat? No one knows.
One of them sleeps in the towels.
One sleeps in the towels? Well, he's done well to find anybody. I would have thought mostly the cat needs protection not just from copyright but from sea eagles. Coming down as only one celebrity animal on this island. If you want to look at anybody who's going to rival us for celebrity animal status, take a look at the otter in the harbour, pal. Clearly, though, your most important contribution to international culture is as the venue for the incisive and groundbreaking seminal work that is Tobermory. For people who don't know the show, each character lives in one of the brightly coloured houses. Orange, green or pink? Which one do you think? Kids of about 4 loved Tobermory, so millions of them begged their parents to bring them here to see the harbour and the bright house, which is probably why they came and not because they wanted to see where Felix Mendelssohn stayed. At this point, this does bring me to two of the most absolutely splendid people, Huina and Blair. Now, do you want to just sort of explain the house that you live in?
Well, they used our house as Miss Hooley's house.
So it was filmed as Miss Hooley's house?
Yes, the outside of it.
In the programme? When people come, did they think Miss Hooley was really going to be there?
Yes.
And were they quite annoying at times, you think?
Very. And that was and that was the adults.
What sort of things did they ask?
Well, there's one particular time the doorbell went and she more or less demanded, "I want to speak to Miss Hooley." And then Blair says, "Look, she's not here." Oh, I know she is. She was very adamant. He says to her, if you were in the Rio Grande, would you expect to see John Wayne shooting Indians? It sailed right over her head.
Have you had any other people? Was this a lot? Did this happen a lot?
It was a lot. We're getting over 200 families a day outside.
So, Blair, did you not feel like going out and just telling them to clear off? You were always polite with them.
She wouldn't let me.
They rang you up sometimes, didn't they?
Oh, all the time. 10 o'clock at night. Miss Hooley, will you tell my daughter to get to sleep now? He slept by the time I was finished with him. Oh, terrible.
Well, I'd like to give a really big round of applause to Hugh and Blair, please. It seems to me from talking to people the last few days, you don't just put up with being miles away and across the sea. You actually love it, as if to say, that way no one can come over here unless they've made an effort. I've been here 3 days, and I started going a bit native and getting a bit Tobermory by the 3rd day. Earlier today, there were 6 people walking along the main street with binoculars and a map of the Tobermory houses, and I thought, bloody tourists clogging the place. Just about to walk straight down here. So I will leave you, Tobermory, with a script of one of my favourite episodes of the children's show that you gave the world. And this is a script I found that this was one of my favourite ones. It goes like this. Hello, children. What sort of a day is it going to be today? Oh, it's going to be a sweltering, droughty day. When even the camels can't cope. Now I wonder where Miss Macready can be. She should be here by now to take the children out on her bus. Oh no, she's stuck behind a tourist at Salon who's doing 3 miles an hour and won't let her pass. I've got an idea. I'll see PC Plum and see if he can help. What's that, PC Plum? Archie the inventor's been flashing? No, he's not. He's just run out of underpants. But we should get him inside, as he's very excited. He's invented a way of turning a moped into a 10,000-seat arena. Bye, children, bye!
Mark Steele an Savala. It is skrihig agus a chudi céile le Mark Steele, le Peason a Varach, le Patrick Mark Be Sam Bryant and Rutger.